Hi, welcome to Bookmark. I'm your host, Don Noble. Today's guest is Professor Hardy Jackson, author of numerous books on Southern history and culture, and the most recent winner of the Clarence Cason Award for Distinguished Work in Narrative Nonfiction. Please join me here on the campus of the University of Alabama as I speak with Hardy Jackson. Hardy, it's good to see you again.
Good to be here.
I'm used to watching you on television some when you get interviewed about the coastline, about Alabama's coast, and of course the piece of Florida coast that you love so much. You're not originally from there, though.
No. Originally from Grove Hill, Alabama. That's where I grew up, and that's where I call home.
And you went to, you could not have gone to Clark County, to the academy.
No,
because there was no academy.
There was no academy. I went to Clark County High School, which you could walk out on the football field and look down the road and see the black school. We were that close to each other. But of course, never the twain would meet during that time. And went to public schools in Grove Hill, and then went to Marion Institute.
I saw that you spent 2 years at Marion.
I did.
And you know, there's a running joke about sending a boy to military school. Well, somebody sent you to Marion Military Academy.
My father sent me, and I always thought it was because I was, I'd been kind of a wild kid, and he just wanted me to tone down. But he told me later it was because he was just really concerned that I wasn't ready to be out at a university, and so maybe I needed a little bit more control. And he's probably right.
Were you particularly young? 17, 16?
I was 18. I graduated from high school, went directly to Marion, spent 2 years there, and then to Birmingham Southern, then here to the university.
You came here for the MA.
Right. I came here with a goal in mind. I had a job. This was back in the 60s when junior colleges were popping up everywhere. And I had a job waiting for me down in Central Florida. All I had to do was get the master's degree. And Alabama had it where I could get it in 12 months. And I actually got it in 9. Lost 35 pounds in the process. Probably should do it again, just for the. But the most I knew of the university was where my classes were and the library. I knew a little bit about Tuscaloosa.
Well, 9 months is quick,
Yeah.
but it made I noticed in acknowledgments that you've written that year at Alabama, studying in the history department was very important. There was a high-powered little core of history professors here at that time.
It was, and I had some people who advised me, you take these, and because I wasn't real sure exactly what I wanted to focus on. So Tom Alexander, John Pancake, Charles Summersell, these people were just terrific, and they took me under their wing and got me through it. Alexander said, you want to write a master's thesis in 6 months? Okay, we'll do it, here's how. That's when I lost the 35 pounds.
And they were very military people.
Yes.
And Pancake had been in the Navy, Ramsey had been in the Navy.
Yeah.
I mean, Alexander and Summersell, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, they both been in service.
Yeah.
It was a really, and it was a very much a Vanderbilt-oriented group. It's like a lot of them either had ties with Vanderbilt or came down out of that old agrarian tradition, and they were something. They really were.
Then it was off after a little junior college. You were off and got a PhD in Georgia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I went to Georgia went there specifically to study colonial history, and that's what I did my PhD work in. But not long after I was out teaching, my interest in 19th and 20th century South came back, and when I moved to Alabama, it came back with a vengeance.
You were at a Clayton?
It was Clayton
Where
Junior.
is that?
It's on the south side of Atlanta.
Ah.
And it was a junior college, became a senior college. Then in Georgia, they decided to name everything universities, and so it became a university. And but it was a good place to be. I enjoyed it there.
It probably has 40,000 students by now.
No,
they
but
all do.
It's probably over 19, 20, somewhere right in there like that. Yeah.
Well, then Jacksonville State called you in as
Bear Bryant said, Mama called.
the head of the history department. Right. That moved your writing career. I could see, you can see the trajectory of your writing. You left, I don't think everybody does this, but when you left Georgia, you sort of stopped writing about Georgia. When you came to Alabama, you've done 4 books now about Alabama.
I just gotten a contract with the University of Alabama Press to do the Rivers book, Rivers of History. And if I had not moved, now I didn't move to do that, but if I had not moved, it probably would have taken me 2 or 3 more years to write it. But moving there, I got plopped down in the Jacksonville State Library between the Coosa and the Tallapoosa, close to Montgomery. I had all of my resources there, and JSU was good to me. They gave me time, they gave me support, and the rest, as we say, is history.
Yeah, it is, exactly. I had a conversation a while back with E.O. Wilson, Ed Wilson, who loves to talk about fresh water in Alabama. You and he are great advocates for. Do we have more fresh water than anybody else, or some
If
such
we don't,
thing?
we're close to it, and we also have more miles of potentially navigable waterway than any other state in the union. I mean, now I said potentially. You've got to do a lot of dams and locks and so on. But if you figure the Tennessee, the Coosa, the Tallapoosa, the Alabama, the Cahaba, the Black Warrior, the Tombigbee, and then the Mobile, that's a lot of rivers.
Well, civilization grows up on rivers,
yes,
and where rivers meet. Is that strongly the case in Alabama?
That where rivers meet, or where there are rapids that you can have a ford. It's like the fall line.
Uh-huh.
You've got, where rivers meet, you've got Montgomery right down from the confluence of the Coosa and Tallapoosa. You've got Tuscaloosa here with the Black Warrior and the Tombigbee. Mobile, of course, where everything comes together down there. But you've also got places like Gadsden and the mill towns that were along the fall line. You've got Centerville had fall lines at the Cahaba, and up on the Tennessee, Huntsville started as a mill town. So,
and the Loaf and Streams book is evolutionarily kind of the next chapter. That is to say, it isn't just cities growing up next to the river; it's putting the river. When you say putting them to work, you mean electricity?
Electricity, and they talked a lot about navigation, but really it was electricity. And Alabama Power, when I was doing the river book, we call them the river book and the dam book. Right. When I was doing the river book, I got into the Alabama archives, and they were so helpful over there, and I found all of this wealth of material that nobody had gone into. And so I talked with them, and they said, well, when you finish the river book, sure, do this. And so we worked out a deal, and it was a lot of fun. They would let me go to the dams and look in the places and go wandering around where the old dam villages were, and I got to interview some of the surviving people who had worked on the dams when they were young, and it was a lot of fun.
And it made a crucial difference. Alabama, I mean, development in Alabama without the dams, without the hydroelectric power, would we be a different place?
We'd be a very different place. It would have come later, but coming when it did, right in the latter part of the teens and the early part of the 20s, it was a major boost to the Alabama economy. And then, of course, when TVA comes in, which Alabama Power was not real happy about, but when TVA came in, you've got another hydroelectric boost up in North Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Now, these last maybe 20 or 30 years, there's a great outcry against damming rivers, and whether it's salmon going upstream or leaving rivers in their natural state. I'm reminded recently that, in my recent memory, it was built, the Tennessee Tombigbee waterway, and I remember the hoopla, and I don't remember anybody talking about it since.
It's a good reason for that is not much goes up and down it. You can sit on the banks of the Tombigbee at Bobby's Fish Camp, which I recommend. All right, now, shameless plug for Bobby's over across from Coffeyville, and you can watch the boats go by for a day, and you may see 5 or 6 barges. Where if you were on the Mississippi, you'd see 500 or 600. Well, maybe not that many, but you'd see 100. And on the Alabama, it's even worse. There are a couple of dams that were built with navigation locks in them on the Alabama. And I've sat there and spent half the day and not seen anything. And what goes by is not the industrial traffic that you would think, but they're moving wood chips or they're moving gravel and stuff like that.
This is projecting forward. I mean, maybe someone had a vision here. I don't think so, but maybe. Is the relationship with Cuba going to alter that? Because every once in a while somebody says, oh, we're going to be sending Cuba wood, coal, soybeans.
Chickens.
Chickens.
They love chickens. Yes. Alabama's going to be, the chicken houses are going to go up all along the rivers, I predict.
Really?
Yeah, Mobile used to be one of the biggest entreports for Cuban merchandise. In fact, there's
Right.
Havana or one of the Cuban cities in Mobile are sister cities. And I would think that there will be a real boom in trade with Cuba. Yeah.
So the Tennessee, Tom Bigby, and the other waterways may turn
very
out
well,
to be a good idea one way or another.
It could happen.
Ah, right. You grew up partly summers and more a lot of time, as I understand your book, Redneck Riviera, the rise and decline
Not fall.
of the Redneck Riviera, but in Seagrove was your grandmother's house?
Right. My grandmother and aunt went down there. My aunt was a major in the WAC, and she had never married, and they traveled together, and they went down there and found this little beach when it was just being developed, and bought. They bought a corner lot across, not on the beach, but across what ultimately comes to Highway 38. Built across there, paid $500 for the lot. They wouldn't buy one on the beach side because it was $1,000 and they were afraid it would blow away, so they just bought one. Built a cottage there in '56, and it's passed through on to me, and that's where we live now. But it's a neat little place. Yeah.
Seagrove and other beachfront property is the same. It's essentially the same anecdote as Coca-Cola stock. We all should have done that back when it was cheap.
I don't even want to know what mine's worth now, because it might cause me to be tempted, and then my children would kill me. And
Yeah. You just stay right there. That's a beautiful place.
That is.
Gulf Shores was a beautiful place, and you explained in Redneck Riviera if an innocent person, a Yankee, should drive down to Gulf Shores and look around at what is it you said, 104 condominium complexes?
Oh, they're all over the place. That was the count. Remember, the book's
Several
4 years old. So.
But it is, when you drive around there now, and there are 12-story high buildings side by side, the question that a person asks is, what happened here? This is a catastrophe. How did this catastrophe happen? And your book answers the question.
Well, I'm glad. So far, nobody's challenged me on that explanation, but it's just that everybody wanted a piece of the beach, and the capitalist came in, and there were virtually no regulations, because one of the nice things about the beach was that you could do pretty much what you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of having zoning laws or anything like that, heaven forbid. And so, in came the money. The only time that I've seen it stopped was in Seagrove Beach. In the 80s, two condominiums were built. Well, there was virtually no infrastructure for it down there. The water was didn't have enough water pressure to get to the top floors. It was just a mess. And this was about the same time that some people from down there decided that they wanted to go to the county commission. And we didn't even have a commissioner then. It was all north of the bay. Go to the county commission and protest. And the county commissioners, we all sat in there, and that county commissioner said, well, what do you want? And they said, we don't want any more condominiums. And they said, well, how are we going to stop it? They said, put a height limit on it. And they said, how high? And somebody said, 10 stories. And somebody else said, 50 feet. We all said, 50 feet, bang. And that was it. And there is a 50-foot limit on buildings in the southern part of Walton County.
But not in Gulf Shores.
Not in Gulf Shores, not in Destin.
Uh-huh.
Now there are ways to maneuver around in Destin and Gulf Shores. There's you can swap property. There's stuff like that. But Walton so far has been saved.
I was interested in your there are two things that went to work at the shore. One was the natural beauty of the shore. The other was the ferocity of Hurricane Frederick.
Yeah.
And you explained that kind of neatly. The hurricane blew everything away, which should have been a catastrophe.
But people, rather than rebuild, they had people who wanted to buy it. They put the little lots side by side, got them big enough to put a condominium on, and up they went.
So the little 40 or 50 foot lots became 200 foot lots?
That's right. And see, the fight right now, particularly the fight, it's been in Gulf Shores, hadn't been resolved. It's been in Destin, hadn't been resolved. It's now coming into South Walton, is access to the beach.
Right.
Who owns the beach? Because there's some people who's claimed that their property goes all the way down to the waterline. And, and then there's the question of customary usage, which is a Old English common law custom that came in with American law. And it's fixing to be fought out down there. So watch your weather reports.
Well, there have to be some kind of access. There has to be.
Well,
I mean, I don't. Maybe
there are public walkovers.
Sure.
But once they get over, then can you put up on any place on the beach? And Gulf Shores had a big battle over this, and it's still not resolved. At least I haven't gotten the word of it being resolved. So, because in the old days we just simply go down wherever we wanted to, put up an umbrella or a tent or something like that,
right,
and leave it up overnight. But of course the turtles come in now, so you've got to, and that's not, I'm all for the turtles. Of course I did suggest that if they leave the tents up, they would weed out the turtles that couldn't figure out a way to get around the poles, and therefore, natural selection would produce a smarter breed of
Hardy,
turtle.
I don't think
that
a phrase
work, no.
called weeding out the turtles is going to take us anywhere at all.
That was something, I think my wife said much the same thing.
You are a trained professional historian, academic, scholarly, footnotes, bibliography, the works. And your early work, Georgia Colonial Life, Oglethorpe, the books that you did, especially at first, and the Rivers books as well, they're scholarly.
Yeah.
But in your last big book, Inside Alabama, you took a different turn there, and you made, and I'm sure, and I want it. You can affirm this or deny it, but or reject it, but I'll bet there were historians who did not like the first person eyewitness treatment of Alabama history.
There were some, and in fact, one of the readers that they sent the manuscript out to didn't like it, and I was told that there was a rather spirited debate in the press committee to, what do we do, that sort of thing, and they finally decided that they would tell me to keep it just the way it was, don't change the voice a bit, and go with it. And it's done well, so I'm pleased. But it grew out of my lectures in an Alabama history class, and so it was very much geared toward the spoken word, and
it's personal history.
Yes, and that's what I said it was.
And I actually, your last two books I reviewed, so I know them well-ish. But I remember noticing that you spent only the first 85 pages to get up past the Civil War, and then another chunk to get to say 1941. Were you born in 41?
Born in 43.
43.
Yeah.
But a big percentage of the book is a eyewitness account in the sense that you were alive in this place at that time.
And I think one of the things that moved me to do that too was by that time I was writing regularly for the Anniston Star. I was writing a column for them. I was writing editorials that people blamed Brandy Ayers for, but it was really me. And journalism approaches a topic, at least verbally, approaches it in a different way than a scholarly tome. And that influenced me. I was writing to people who, in many cases, don't read history very often, and I was hoping they would.
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah. I wondered when I first got a look at it whether there was a lot of blowback, a lot of reaction. If you agree with, I characterize that book as being pretty critical of Alabama politics and politicians, leadership. Not to mention issues of race and greed.
The overall answer is no. In fact, the only really pointed criticism I got was when I suggested that the Civil War was indeed about slavery,
Yes.
even among people who didn't own slaves. And I got a few people who said that they disagreed with me respectfully, but the best comment, other than of course the reviews that y'all did, but the best comment I got, a good friend of mine in the Methodist Church there in Jacksonville, a black lawyer, and he had he had me autograph a copy of it for his uncle, whose name was Thomas, and he wanted me to autograph it to Uncle Tom. But he told me the chapter that I did on how Alabama was at the time of the Civil Rights Movement, white attitudes, and so he said, "You're the first person I've read that got it right," and I took that to the bank.
I mean, you are fairly explicit that Alabama would have done better, that integration and general cultural evolution would have gone better, smoother, with better leadership. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, you lay the blame at the top.
And still do. Alabama has had numerous opportunities to break out of the mold that it's found itself in the 50s and 60s, and hasn't done it. And you can look at voter returns for the last two elections, and you can see that there's still a strong desire in Alabama not to move ahead. It's fine to move ahead if there's money to be made, but let's don't take social progress along with it. And it's sad in some ways, but in other ways it's understandable, because it's bred in a lot from fear, and fear of change can affect both races. And so Alabama has always been a very conservative state in the sense that it doesn't want to change. And it's had politicians who have preached that change is bad. And you combine those two and you get mired.
This may be just my reading, and readers have their own filters and lenses.
Turn it loose. Yeah.
But I get the impression from your book, and others as well, that in a sense the masses have been bamboozled by the leaders to vote against this is like what's wrong with Kansas kind of thing. What's wrong with Alabama? Why do people vote against stuff that might be really good for them?
I think to a large degree Alabamians know it could be worse. And change can always work against you. And so voting for change is voting for the unknown, and sometimes the known, even if it's not that good, is better than what the guy down the street's got.
Okay. Sometimes a person ought to take a chance on the unknown.
Tell me the last state politician, who really advocated fundamental change.
Oh.
Maybe Bob Riley in the failed Amendment 1, but it was really not as fundamental change as his opponents made it seem. No, I can't think of one. I can. Bibb Graves probably was one.
Well, Bibb Graves had his own problems.
He did, but
But those last two books, the Redneck Riviera and Inside Alabama, Personal History, those are the books that come closest to the tone and really the voice of Clarence Kaysen in 90 Degrees in the Shade, which is why you are the most recent winner of the Kaysen Award. What do you think about that?
It's why I'm most honored to be that, because that book and its approach, a journalist writing history, writing on-the-spot history,
right.
It has influenced me, and to have an award named after him is a singular honor. It really is.
Yeah, it's a pretty good roster that you've joined.
I'm humbled, and a lot of people say it's hard to humble me, but I'm humbled to be in that group. I really am.
Yeah, I guess the closest writer, in a sense, would be Wayne Flint.
Yeah.
But lots of others too. I mean, but he's the other kind of historian, journalist, personal voice historian. Yeah. But that was not.
Well, he's good company to be in.
Well, Gates Elise and Rick Bragg and lots of others.
Yeah, well, I like them too.
That's quite a bunch.
Yeah.
But that book and Redneck Riviera, they're a couple years in the past, and you're still writing. What are you doing now?
Well, I write the weekly column and occasional features pieces. But back when my mother died 2 years ago, and we broke up the house, and I found all of these letters that my father had written during World War II, that my mother and uncles and all had written, and I got to reading these and thinking about what was it like for these guys coming back at the end of World War II. And I began, because since I was there, this is another one of those examples about writing where I was.
Right.
And I began thinking about the possibility of something like a memoir, but it would be more a memoir of his generation and what I remember of them in the late 40s and the 50s, up until about the time I went off to college. And it will be about politics, because my father was a member of the courthouse gang. It would be about things that perhaps should not be talked about in mixed company. I've got stories. My father had a establishment in our backyard. It was called the Poughton House. It was where, Clark County was a dry county surrounded by dry counties. So Daddy's friends would leave their liquor out in this shed that they had. Daddy eventually fixed it up really nice. It had a kitchen, had an indoor toilet, even though they still went outside and all. And they would come out there on Wednesday nights, because the newspaper came out on Thursday, but it was hot off the presses Wednesday night. So the newspaper editor would bring the paper out, and they would all sit out there and they would talk about the news and they'd tell stories. We had 2 probation officers. We had a former aide to the Republican congressman. We had the local district attorney, the newspaper editor, and Daddy was sort of the kingpin. And I sat there and listened to stories. I remember, and so I put them all together.
Well, you put them all together?
I'm putting them together.
And when you get them done, I'll read them.
Well, it's a slow process right now because it's pompano season, and so I've got to get back to fishing.
Okay. Well, we'll let you go then.
All right. Thanks.
Artie, thank you very much. This is
Thank you.
a pleasure.
I appreciate it. I do. It's a joy to be here.